Alright, so welcome back to the channel. Right off the bat, I know, this is not audiophile content, it's an inferior listening experience because blah blah blah. I'm aware, okay? This isn't for the majority of my viewers anyway. So why am I making a video about these anyway? Well, the CH500, the ones in black right here, have been my personal workout headphones for a couple of years now, alongside my Bose Soundstage Free, the truly wireless earbuds. Now, despite the fact that I'm not a huge fan of the CH500 sound signature, I've kept them around for as long as I have because the tech within them it's actually really great. They're plenty comfortable and provide a good grip without feeling like a vice. Their connectivity range is pretty god tier. I could basically go anywhere between a month or two without having to worry about charging these up, and to top all of that, I could use them for the majority of workouts without worrying about scratches or damaging them since they're only 40 bucks. So while all of that still holds true to date, I went ahead and purchased their successors, the CH510, when I noticed they were on sale for $40 too. So, did I waste my money or was it worth it? Let's find out. Let's begin with the contents and build quality here. Both of these came with very similar offerings. The headphones themselves, a charging cable minus the power brick, and the instruction booklets / warranties. Now, as far as the materials are concerned, they're mostly similar with a few key differences. While the 500s feature a flat matte plastic on the headband and a glossy surface on the cups, the 510 feature a matte crosshatch design all around the outer portions. Here, take a pretty good look at that. It's actually really nice. Pretty nice detail there. They feature a similar layout of buttons with similar functions. The 500s offer a concave design, while the 510s offer a convex design that protrudes from the shell. Now, frankly, the 500s buttons are better, considering they feel more responsive and are clickier than the softer, mushier feeling buttons on the 510s. Let's discuss the comfort aspect here. Despite the fact that both headphones feature the same type of plastic, I should mention that the clamp force differs on each of these a bit. When I first got the 500s, the force was so strong, I couldn't stand them for longer than 20 minutes at a time. Of course, since they were intended for workouts, I didn't mind that all that much. In fact, I kind of preferred the fact that they stayed on your head and didn't really move with your workouts. As a couple of months went by, their clamp severely diminished and are now very comfortable to use for extended periods of time. Now, don't get me wrong, they won't slide off. They still clamp enough so that they're not sliding around everywhere. They're just not as cumbersome as they used to be. On the other hand, the 510s featured the same amount of clamp force out of the box as the 500s do now. I don't see these getting any less clampy over time, so that's definitely a good thing. As for the clamp force itself, it can be a bit on the softer side of things, but I am still perfectly able to use these for all sorts of activities, including push-ups and sit-ups, without feeling that they're going to fall off. Of course, you might still have to readjust them a little every now and then, but that's just the very nature of movement itself, you know? You gotta adjust. Now, the pads themselves are basic, regardless of what you go with, but they're pretty acceptable. The outer material feels similar, but the inner material feels a tad more squishy on the 510s, while feeling a little spongier on the 500s. I'll be frank, it sort of reminds me of certain toilet seats. You can see the resemblance, I'm sure. So let's talk about the range. I went outside on a clear day. Not really any clouds. It was about the middle of the night, so there weren't any people or cars obstructing or anything like that. It was just a clear path. I put the phone on the floor, and then I started walking away from it. The first blip I encountered with the CH500s occurred at step 25. It began cutting off at 46. Here would be the point where you start to actually worry and start to want to probably dial it back and get closer to the source. Now, on the flip side, the CH510s experienced the first blip at step 54, and then they began cutting off significantly at step 70. So, there's definitely a big difference between the two as far as that is concerned. And now let's approach the sound quality. Needless to say, no EQ will be used for this evaluation, nor at any other point in this review. I simply don't care enough to have to EQ these every time I use them, nor activate any preset on my phone, so yeah, that's not going to happen. Now let's begin with the bass. So both have a hump in the mid-bass, as is expected of headphones in this price range that aim for that particular demographic. I must say though, the execution on both of these it's relatively tasteful. It's not overbearing. The response of electronic bass notes seem a bit softer on the 510s than on the 500s. Truth be told, I do prefer the response on the 500s a bit better. It just hits with a little more intensity and power, it's one of the most important attributes in headphones meant to motivate your workout, get you pumped, you know. However, and here's the trade-off, the 510s present the sub bass a little more forward than the 500s do. Bass guitars sound more forward and provide a bit more texture on the 500s, but at the cost of giving them a slightly honky tonality. It's not a massive deal breaker though, particularly for a budget headphone. A budget Bluetooth headphone, should I say. Now, kick drums aren't really a night and day difference here either. Both headphones present them quite similarly. I'd say they're good enough, but if you're outside with a bunch of wind and a bunch of like cars passing by and all that, the kick drums might kind of wash into the background on both of these. Now let's talk about the mids. So the quality of female vocals here is simply better on the 510s than on the 500s. It is clearly an upgrade, which can be clearly heard in its smooth reproduction and its pleasing timbre. The 500, unfortunately, falls short of that. Same thing goes for cellos. The 510 really help in getting rid of that paper-thin timbre that is common amongst Bluetooth headphones. Cellos sound smoother and more natural by quite a noticeable amount. Generally speaking, the mids sound far more emphasized on the 500 than on the 510s, and this time I actually mean that in a bad way. It's the type of emphasis that sounds a little blown out and harsh. Now let's discuss the treble. I'll be frank. Neither of these have very impressive highs. They definitely suffer from a bit of peakiness and jaggedness. However, the 500 once again dropped the ball here. They're just clearly more sibilant and harder to listen to than the 510s. While the 510s are a little sibilant too, they come across as a little shiny rather than painful. I will say this though, the 500s are a little airier than the 510s. In Thunder Horse by Deathclock, it's far easier to hear that coin rubbing effect I've mentioned in previous reviews, which indicates the presence of air up top. Soundstage and Imaging. This one's kind of a coin toss. The soundstage on the 500 is wider than on the 510, that's for certain. Not that they were wide in the first place, but you get the point. On the flip side, imaging on the 510 is not necessarily better, but it definitely is more tangible and solid on the 500. We're talking about like clarity as a whole. The increased level of clarity is just, it's definitely noticeable on the 510. Conclusion time. I know this was a short video. It was not meant to be a long and lengthy and detailed video in the first place, but here are my 2 cents on these two headphones in my experience. Unsurprisingly, the newer headphone is the clear winner here. However, it's not just because of its sound. Yes, they sound better overall, but don't forget, you also gain the ability to charge using USB-C rather than micro USB. You get 35 hours of listening time rather than 20, and quick charging capabilities, just to name a few extras. Yes, I spent another $40 or so, and I didn't really have to. I could have kept these, and they were acceptable for workouts. Really, I didn't have any huge complaints. But you know what? It was pretty worth it. I'm glad I spent the amount. So yeah, that pretty much concludes this video. Thank you very much for joining me, and see you in the next one. Okay, ciao.